Hey guys, it's Zero and Go, back for episode number 16. And we got the whole gang today, the OG gang. We got me, Mark the Shark, and August Thompson. And this should be a good one. It's going to be open forum. We're going to dive into something real deep.
First one in a long time, so
yeah.
Back at it, maybe a little rusty, but it'll be fun.
It's a nice little reunion.
Absolutely. School kind of got the best of us. Summer started taking off. But hey, as long as we keep coming back.
Yeah. So first things first, Mike, why don't you tell the listeners some big news you got?
About the book?
Sure.
About,
or maybe about your travels.
Oh, okay,
your future plans.
My future endeavors, huh? Okay, so I was lucky enough to get accepted into the University of Denver, and if you guys don't know, we're located here in Sacramento. So in late August, I will be taking off and heading over there for a year to go to grad school. And with that being said, Mark and August are going to carry it strong while I'm away. And when I come back on breaks and whatnot, hopefully we'll get a few podcasts in so we can throw those up. But yeah, so there's going to be a little of a split here. And I will be heading out there. But I will bring a mic. And if I find someone interesting out in Denver, I'll throw it up on Zero and Go.
Yeah, he'll be like a satellite campus of Zero and Go.
Yeah, I'll be like your off-site reporter, you know, on a news station.
Here from Denver, it's snowing a lot.
Yeah.
And maybe we can figure out some technology thing where we get to like Skype you in every now and then or something.
Yeah, Skype you in.
That'd be sick. But, yeah, so, but if we blow up in the time that Mike was gone, we'll know who the weak link was. So,
yeah.
Good news there.
Yeah, clearly. That annoying third voice.
Baby.
Get him out of here.
All right, so, anyways, with Michael leaving, we are going to be looking at getting a new book, and I think we've decided on one now to base our upcoming podcast off of. You want to let them know, August?
I mean, we're looking at the infamous Jordan Peterson, who I believe we're all going to go see next week, actually.
Yeah. He's coming to Sacramento.
June 27th.
So our little Hoorah gang has a pretty good following for Jordan Peterson. I was first introduced to them by Michael. Michael said, "Hey man, you got to listen to this guy. He's just a genius. This guy's just I mean, Michael just worships this guy's feet."
Jordan can do no wrong in Michael's eyes.
Pretty much.
Close enough.
But as I got to know and kind of look into it a little bit, I couldn't help but agree with Michael. I mean, Jordan Peterson truly is. I tell people he's a modern day Einstein when it comes to psychology and kind of how to interpret things at a much deeper level and not kind of just. I feel like very often people are sprinting through life. I feel like Jordan kind of just lets you sit back and say, "Hey, like, take a look at all of it before you make your next move."
Yeah, I definitely think he's one of the great philosophical minds of our generation.
Absolutely.
And just a disclaimer, we're not all right fascists. Because a lot of stuff on the news has been very critical of Jordan. And
Jordan gets a lot of flack in the news.
Purport him to be some right-wing fascist, and we're totally not with that. So I feel like nowadays you just have to disclaim that at the beginning. So
really?
If we ever do get famous, they're going to come back to this or something. So that's my disclaimer.
Interesting. I mean, I've seen a couple of the videos.
I feel it's sad that that's come to a thing. Yeah. Where Michael felt the need to have a disclaimer on.
On a podcast on episode 16.
Yeah.
With our 2 followers. They're hunting for us.
They'll take anything to bring you down, man.
Yeah, they'll take anything to bring you down. It started off as a joke, but then I was like, this is kind of serious now. Because I know, like, people get very upset. They'll read one article and then they'll just throw a lot of hate at you.
Michael's really worried about the hate coming in.
I'm not worried about the hate, I'm just saying.
Seems like you're pretty worried.
I just want to make that clear so people don't try to frame us or misrepresent our views.
But I feel like people call him a fascist because they don't actually understand or read his teaching.
Well, yeah. That's,
because he doesn't really pick one side over the other. He says that it's a combination of the both. It's like you can't. It's the left and the right. You have to have both of them.
He has like tens of thousands of hours of lectures on video on YouTube. All the social justice warriors would have found one by now and say like, this is why you're racist and have a clip to prove it, but they don't. So that's pretty interesting. And he makes people think, and people don't really want to think really hard.
That's true.
Or think they're wrong, because maybe they've been acting some certain way and they don't want to acknowledge that.
That's right, man. Those guys are just like the ones who believe the Earth is flat.
Yeah, like the Earth is flat, like all other planets are round, but the Earth is flat. Like, what are the chances of that? Like, man, that's kind of weird.
I feel like that whole thing, like, isn't even like a real, like, people believe it. It's just people trolling at this point, where people are just saying the Earth is flat just because they know they're going to be on the news and they know they're going to like get more controversy and get more followers out of it. Like J.R. Smith and stuff saying that, I feel like, yeah, he's just bullshitting and he's just trolling.
Yeah, he's probably laughing behind the screen. Everyone's here like, what? No way. Is he that stupid? He's just there laughing. Oh, yeah. Not bad.
Anyways.
You got some serious people like Eddie Bravo. I feel like Eddie like seriously believes it.
Alex Jones.
Or Alex, yeah.
Interdimensional child molesters.
Yeah.
What? What are we talking about?
InfoWars. You've never heard of InfoWars?
No.
Alex Jones, he's like the host of InfoWars, and it's like an extreme, like, how would you even describe it, Michael?
It's like, it's basically like a news YouTube channel in which he describes just certain events, current events, and he'll have his own wacky take on it, which thing he thinks is happening. And he'll say he has sources like in the government, or he knows this because of this expert or something.
It's a lot of conspiracy stuff.
It's all conspiracy. It's mostly conspiracy. But like Joe Rogan said, like, yeah, that was the problem, because like a lot of it is conspiracy, but then he did get a few things right. And so it's like, God damn it. So now you got a few things right, so maybe you could have other stuff that's right as well. So then you really have to do the research and dig deep to find whether it's true or not. But most of the stuff is fake.
I feel like it's scary though when you're like listening to a source and he's only had a few things right, and then somehow that becomes like a reputable source in some people's eyes, because then they think everything's fake, and then you can't just distinguish like reality from non-reality, the truth from the false.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty problematic for like society as a whole.
That just shows like the poor education that people are getting with learning how to critically think and hold two contradictory thoughts in their heads, and how to disseminate what is true and what isn't true.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what you get if you just focus all on technology and the STEM fields. That's just a theory of mine, though.
What do you mean?
Because if you only go to very like analytical numbers and science, you're not able to abstractly think and debate yourself.
Be like a philosopher.
Yeah, philosophize and determine which action is best.
It's very different thinking. It's kind of like
two different realms.
Yeah, philosophy is definitely the more like artsy way you could say, and the like scientific is the real like orderly, like I do this and I get this result. It's like A goes to B, B goes to C type mentality. Instead of like thinking of how A, B, C through Z all connect to make one big picture, you just focus on the process and the actual like hardcore facts and numbers.
That's why I say people feel like they end up like sprinting through their life. Because I feel like if you're like you're just hustling to get from A to B, and then from B you're trying to get as fast as you can to C. And then like, but as a philosopher, and there's people like who take a step back. They're just watching people run, and they're saying, "Oh, I'm gonna go from A, but I'm gonna go to D, because that's what fits me best."
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
That's how I think.
That's an
about
interesting
a lot
take
of it.
on it.
Because it's like, well, especially like my job right now, I totally feel like I'm sprinting. It's just an odd feeling.
Well, I feel like it's also different. It probably varies differently depending on like what field you're in and like what you're doing with your life at that moment. Because if you're like in this upcoming marketing business, that like it's like a dog eat dog world out there. Like the person that can get from A to B to C to D the quickest is gonna win.
Yeah.
And so that's where like that orderly mentality and like hard drive will be very beneficial for you within our current society.
I know, that's why for me it's so hard to not call it a rat race.
That's kind of why that term's been
Yeah.
coined, isn't it?
But then it's also funny because like when I think about people who just started their career or like start making like really good money, it's like, oh, they just started the ladder that leads to nowhere.
To what?
Yeah. To what? To more bigger things.
That's the question.
That's what. I don't know. It's interesting. It's an interesting thought, and so that's why I think reading like JP is going to be so kind of like, let's all just take a step back for a moment, and I don't know, if people can't answer the why question,
Yeah.
and maybe we should also throw Simon Sinek into some of this, then it's like, I can't understand or correlate or relate to you, really see what you're doing, because if you can't answer the why, it's like, why are you doing it at all?
Yeah.
You haven't really thought about it.
And that's what it seems like Jordan's going down to. Hey, if you just keep asking why and why and why and all these questions, you're eventually going to get down to what he's talking about. And then he'll hopefully have some answers while you're down there. So you're just not lost.
Yeah.
You know,
It's almost
just
like
roaming around
like a
there
little
aimlessly.
kid. Did you guys ever have that little kid or little brother, since you guys are brothers, that just always was like, but why? Well, why? Well, why?
Yeah.
Why? You know? And it's like
Yeah,
after a while...
I would usually get to like 2 whys before my mom was
Exactly.
like, that's just the way it is.
That's the standard answer because I
Life's
said
not
so.
fair.
Yeah. Because I said so.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah, those answers. So that's how you knew as a kid, like, oh, I got you.
Yeah.
You couldn't go any further.
You know you're frustrated.
Yeah. And that was a signal I got my mom all the time on. I knew it. And that was good enough for me.
Bazinga. Just one in the tally board.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But it's true. You have to start with why. Because then it'll give you the meaning that you're looking for. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's deep.
Oh, that's just how I feel about it. Anyway,
It'll
what
be
is
a
it?
fun book to read, though. I'm excited.
How much is the book? You bought it, right?
Yeah, it's not very much.
We're
It's-
talking like $12 on Amazon?
I think it's less than 20. So
Great.
Nice.
About
it's cheaper,
6
obviously, if you get the Kindle and stuff like
Is it?
that.
It's about a 400, 500 page read.
Less than that,
3?
maybe.
It always amazed me as I started it. I've only started a little bit of it. How many sources he has.
Well, yeah, that's another great thing. So he's not just talking about whatever. He puts some scientific or some evidence backing it. Obviously, he's a professor and he knows how to cite. Well, God, I hope so by now. So he's really good at citing. And so anything that you think is debatable or you think is questionable, you can just go straight to the source and you'll find what he's talking about and you'll see the evidence and why he's making these certain claims.
Yeah. He puts it all out there for you.
Which is nice, because most books like this won't have the sources that they got it from that you can just go directly to.
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That's it. If you don't have it, go get it. It's going to be tight. A lot of good knowledge in there. It's something you won't regret. And I think when we look back on this 30 years, it's going to be one of the books that changed, made the 21st century.
yeah. I think it's going to be one of those books that not enough people, everyone kind of wish they would have read.
Yeah.
And if you didn't know, then you should have known. And you should have kind of opened your eyes and opened your ears and really paid attention to what's going on. Because this really is just it's really telling you, like, hey, this is the way the world's progressing, and this is what history has taught us, so learn from it. And it's because it's like history really isn't getting taught enough, I think, at all. Actually, I have a point on history, just as a brief segue. So you guys notice, like, we all learn about Roman history?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, that's just what's drilled into us.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I started asking, like, well, why do we learn about Roman history? And for some reason I was thinking, like, why don't we learn about, like, Jewish history? Right? And then I think, like, when we're talking about how there are biblical references in Jordan Peterson, I'm thinking, like, what is the history of the Jews? Is it really the Bible? Or is there, like, who wrote their history? Or who covered it up?
Or who altered it?
Altered it, covered it up. I don't know.
And history is always written by the winners. So
Always written by the winners, right?
that's also a very interesting twist on history and what it was actually like and what we perceived or think it was actually like.
And it's also objective.
A lot of it is.
Well, it has to be, right? Because the human's writing it. So someone's writing it with their own with their bias, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Unless you were like really there, like you'll never know.
I know. That's what I think's very, very cool about it.
But the reason why we learn about Roman history and stuff isn't that because like Western society was built off of like Roman Catholic.
Well, it is one
Right.
of the biggest. Yes,
I
that's
think-
very true, actually.
Yeah, well, Western society can like even go back deeper into like the Greeks. I think that's where
Yeah,
modern.
it's-
I think that's where most academics kind of agree. That's where it started from.
Like Aristotle and
Yeah,
Plato and
'Cause
stuff.
they started like basically politics and culture, and
Mhm.
they started talking about all that stuff.
That's like when they first started having like kind of like real like arts people that didn't like tribute to the like the regular part of like hunting and gathering part of society, right?
It's where, yeah, it's where they started to notice about civilizations and different civilizations and cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Like they like define some of those terms, and like they define like specialization where one person just works on one thing the entire time. Like
And they get really good at that.
Yeah.
Like you get really good at making horseshoes or something.
yeah, so that's where that started from, and that's where
Blacksmiths and
yeah.
all that.
That's where like Adam Smith basically said the same idea, and then he started basically classical economics. And so like you'll link all these ideas back to these older guys basically.
How did he start class? What is classical economics, first of all?
It's just like the class. It's like they basically created economics. Like someone created fascism and like defined the term and defined the broad outlines of it.
Yeah.
Adam Smith sort of did that with classical economics, where it's like individual economics is like sort of like laissez-faire, like let them do what they want to do, like free market stuff. Free market guys are basically like sort of derive some of their stuff from there, and he basically said like he had coined the term. I don't know if you guys heard it, invisible hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, so like people are guided by the invisible hand in like the market, and so like that's basically another way of saying like what they want for their self-interest would be best for the community and the community's interests and stuff like that. So your selfishness will create something good, because like I have to make something that you want, so I have to make bread, and the baker doesn't make bread out of the goodness of his heart. He makes bread to make money, to like feed his family and to succeed and thrive for himself. But it also helps you out because now you have bread and then I get money, so it's a win-win. And so that's where a lot of those like classical liberals and stuff get their ideas from.
What time period is this from?
I think it's like 1700s. God, someone's gonna shoot me on that. I honestly don't know.
Because
Yeah.
I'm just curious
I
as
think
to
it's
when
1700s.
someone started thinking like that. It's very.
Look it up.
I mean, that's how we function today.
And this guy was crazy though. This guy would be so in his head, he will walk for 6 miles and then like wake up from his thought, and he'll be 6 miles from his home and won't know he got there because he's so ingrained in his head. And you have to think that's how they were thinking back then, because they didn't have TVs or anything to entertain them. So he was so good in his head. And there's a famous case that I learned in one of my economics class where he's walking through like this factory and he's thinking so hard, and there's like a vat of piss, and he falls into the vat of piss because he's not looking where he's going. And then that was a huge story about him. So
Wow.
he was a kind of a weird guy though, with like the ladies. I don't think he got
They all
got
are.
much.
The
But
best one- the best
I
ones
just say
are.
I don't think he was very good at. But
He probably wasn't
but
terrible
he was
at
a
social
genius.
interaction.
He probably didn't care, you know?
Yeah.
Like
It didn't interest him, I guess.
Yeah, that
or-
was his favorite thing, was coming
Yeah.
up with those things.
Well, some of those
that
people are
shows
like
to
that.
show you like how in depth he is about, and that's why he's so smart. That's why I like him the best. Like I really like Adam Smith. I mean, he had that famous book Wealth of Nations, which is like starting of economics and stuff like that. So like it's a huge book. Well, it's not starting of economics, but it's like a huge part of the economic world.
See, that's why I advocate. I don't know. That's why it always would amaze me to see what it would be like if you went with no technology for just a couple of months. Kind of where your mind would start to develop.
Yeah.
Dude, you know what podcast you would really love then?
Who?
Is Jesse Altar or something. It was pretty recent on Joe Rogan's podcast, but this guy spent 2 weeks like in a monk monastery, and so like no internet, no cell phone, no nothing, and like this guy just has a crazy story about like he does a very good job of explaining the experience to someone. Do you know what podcast I'm talking about?
I haven't listened to that one.
Oh, you both need to listen to it then. If you guys like that type of conversation and that idea of thinking and just so much thinking, because like in the monastery, like they spent like a lot of the like almost all their time, just like thinking and just like praying and like these, and it wasn't a like Buddhist monastery. It was like a Russian Catholic or something, he said, but basically like no connection to the outside world or anything, and his name's Jesse like Altar or something, and it's on Joe Rogan. It's like episode 128, I think.
Wow.
Or 1,128, so 1,128. But it's a dope podcast, and if you're like thinking about exploring that idea, like him describing his thoughts and the way he just thought about the world and like how he now thinks about everything as like time, and he's like it like made him think about like visiting his parents. Like he visits his parents like twice a year because they live in Florida and he lives like somewhere on the West Coast or something, and so basically like put everything in his life into perspective through time. So he's like, okay, my parents are 88, like luckily like hopefully they'll live another 5 years, and that means I will only get to see them 2 more times for 5 years. So I really only have 10 more visits with my parents, and then it makes him like live in the moment more and like really think, like cherish this moment that he's having with his parents. But he applied that same reverse engineering into everything, and so he like noticed like how much time he spent on Sundays like watching football games, and like that ended up being like 3,600 hours or something that it would lead to the amount in the rest of his life. And he was also describing like how like it can also. Yeah, so it was a crazy podcast about like how he views life and time and everything now. Just basically spending 15 days at this monastery where you're connected from everything.
Yeah. And
like you can't like leave the monastery or anything. And so he ended up running 123 miles up and down a driveway. Just because like his way of like thinking and processing, kind of like Adam Jones, what made me think of it was him just like running, because he loves to run and stuff, and so that was kind of his way of thinking and stuff. So he was probably getting in that same like brain wavelength, wave loop as like Adam Smith is. How Michael's saying he's just walking miles and miles and just like thinking,
Wow.
But it's a crazy, David Goggins. Remember that podcast?
Yeah.
So this guy, Jesse, had David Goggins. I don't know. Do you know who he is? He's like a guy that used to be super fat, like over 300 pounds, and then like just changed his life like 180, and then became like, was he a Navy SEAL?
Or he went through it a couple times.
I think he went through it a couple times, but like didn't make it because like medical reasons or something. I don't know. That could be completely wrong. Maybe he made it, and I'm just a fucking liar. I can't remember exactly. But anyways, he turned into this like super fit, super athlete. Like he did ultra marathons and stuff. And he's just like a crazy guy. Like his willpower is just insane. And so Jesse had David Goggins over to his house and lived with him for a month. And so with David Goggins, like his thought process when he accepted the invite was, well, this crazy motherfucker was crazy enough to ask me to come live with him, and like basically whatever David's doing, I'm doing type thing, and he just wanted to live the lifestyle of David Goggins, and so so David accepted the invite just because he wanted to prove like this guy's crazy enough to ask. I'm going to be crazy enough to actually accept this invite, and so he went and lived with Jesse and his wife. And they would just do, like, his assessment workout, his first workout he did with David Goggins. He was, like, doing an assessment of Jesse and said, all right, do as many pull-ups as you can. And so Jesse does, like, 8 pull-ups. And then David's like, okay, we're not leaving until you do 100. And so they didn't leave the gym or anything until he did 100. And he gets, like, a little bit more through the pull-ups. And he's like, David, I can't do this. And he's like, I already know where your mind's at. You're a fucking quitter. And because David's like a very like just blunt, straightforward type of talking dude. And so basically it was basically a month of Jesse trying to like understand himself and his body and like pushing it to told limits and like stuff like that. And like another thing that he did, they went like on a run, and then after their like 8-mile run or whatever, there was like a frozen lake in like Chicago or somewhere up north, and David just started pounding and like breaking through the ice, and then like jumped in and was like, all right, get in. And like, so he just did a bunch of random crazy stuff with this dude just to live like an intense lifestyle for a month. And yeah, it was a crazy podcast, but Joe Rogan, I think it's episode 1128. If you want to like just hear about some guy's like life and how he views life now of like time and like thinking about the big picture instead of just like, you know, rushing from A to B to C to D. And so it's a very interesting podcast.
Oh, that sounds like a fun month.
It sounds like an intense month.
It sounds like something you would talk about for a year and be like, dude, you have no idea what I just did.
Yeah. And that's basically why he wanted to do it.
That's kind of cool, actually. I'd definitely be open to the idea, personally.
Yeah. He said it was like the most intense month of his life. Like,
wow.
For sure.
I think we should do that. We should honestly plan. We should do like a backpacking trip and go and just show off for like a couple weeks.
I love backpacking trips, dude. I feel like it's a good way to reset.
It has to be. You're just getting away from everything.
It has to be.
I think literally just being away from literally everything is important. No cell phone signal, no nothing. Just being out there, it really lets you to like time to reset, like stop thinking. Because like by like day 2, like you forget you even have a phone, and like time doesn't really matter. If the sun's up, you can still be doing things. If the sun's down, you're probably tired and want to go to bed, you know? And so it's like almost like nothing matters.
What I think is always amazing is how quickly you can forget things, especially like physical things. Like emotional things, that's an entirely different story. People harbor those. But like when you start letting go of like a phone or I don't know, like a car, or like things like a laptop things, I feel like eventually you just kind of like, if it's not like a necessary need for, I guess, your line of work, eventually you just kind of like, it's gone. And you stop caring about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
It definitely happens though. Like, can be a good thing.
I think it's a great thing. I always think of Wim Hof when I think like that.
That dude's crazy. That dude's living life like in every moment, you know? He is one of those guys that when you're like, even like through YouTube, through the TV, he just seems like one of those guys that's so authentic and living in every moment that it just brings this aura about it, you know? And it's crazy that you can even like experience that through like the documentary and through his YouTube and stuff.
I know. He birthed from pain. From pain came this beautiful human. I think that's what's so interesting. You guys know that, right? Because his wife died.
His wife, yeah.
And then just like all of a sudden, he just found the cold.
Yeah.
It really is.
He's a very, like, spiritually and, like, scientifically, a crazy human.
Yeah. Yeah, he is.
Absolutely ridiculous.
And when you explain them to people, people don't believe it.
Yeah, people think you're
No
full of
way.
shit when you're describing
I think they have a
Wim Hof.
documentary and like photos and videos of him just doing things.
I've told people, and they're like, they just look at me sideways. Like,
Did you watch the documentary?
I may have.
Oh, dude. If you
On
haven't, you need
Vice?
to watch it.
I watched the Vice
It's like
one.
45 minutes long or
okay.
something.
I already did watch that one.
Yeah.
And the woman, when the camera gal went and she started crying. That shit was like, she's like, I just started crying. Like, I didn't know it, like, it just came out of me. Just like, what? Just on breathing.
Yeah.
The whole thing centered on breathing. How simple. I always think that's amazing when sometimes life's hardest questions are so simple. insane.
We tend to like to blow things out of proportion. You
We
know,
always do. Our problems are bigger than they ever will be and ever could be because they're inside our damn head.
yes, that's 100% accurate.
Like what?
That's
the
a
truth.
fucking quote right there.
Trademark that bitch.
Yeah. Write that down.
Have you guys seen? This brought up another scene from a film I saw, a documentary actually. The Magic Pill on Netflix. Not Take Your Pills. That's the one on Adderall, which is also a very great watch. But the Magic Pill is all about going like ketogenic and going like a low carb, high fat, high protein diet.
Yeah.
And you basically watch it. It talks all about how it could be potentially the leading cause of heart disease. That's why heart disease is such a high like mortality rate here in America.
What the keto diet is?
No, the high carbohydrate diet.
Yeah.
Because when they talk about that, they bring in a microbiologist. They do case studies on a woman with asthma, a woman with cancer, 2 women with diabetes, and then a little girl with like high functioning autism. And all of a sudden it cured like every single one of them. Like they go just changing their diet. The woman who was diabetic like bawled her eyes out because she was at the point where she was about to start getting dialysis, and they told her like you could die at any moment. And all she had to do was change what she was eating. She dropped like 40 pounds in like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But anyway, hold on, let me finish. This is a really interesting part. There was a professor from South Africa who came forward saying like he recommended to some woman to feed their child like high fats and high proteins and cut out the carbs, make them very minimal. And another doctor came out and like basically called him a liar and like put him on the board to get his doctorate removed. So he put this whole presentation where he got all these case studies, and in this study, he found that like Kellogg, which another like some of those big time brands, I don't know, and anything like companies like Kellogg, there was like 5 of them, all had their hands into the research that was getting done to build the Heart Healthy Association. So they were funding because there was no funding for the research at all whatsoever.
Yeah.
So they were the only ones who funded it, and they funded it to where their products were the ones that they deemed that everyone should be eating. And the guy who went and studied went and picked selective countries to like prove that this is to like kind of correlate. Oh, this is like where heart disease is coming from a country like Japan, where they eat a lot of rice, so that's a lot of carbs. And then they hand selected, but they didn't go to Africa. And Africa was just high fats, high proteins. And they said they were like the people there were they're like gods. Like they were just had perfect teeth. There was like this one tribe, they had perfect teeth. All were like 6'4", extremely muscular, just because of what they were eating. It was insane.
Wow.
So it's definitely worth a watch. But it talked about, there was a scene where the holistic farmer is just sitting there, and he's like, look, like, you gotta understand that we're meant to live like in one with nature. Like, he's like, the earth is ready to give. All you have to do is come willingly. He's like, you can get way more from it when working with it rather than trying to wrestle it and figure out how much you can pull from it. It's insane, dude. They did a whole scene on like what agriculture is, which I didn't really think about like this before, where agriculture is you walk into like a landscape and you clear out all the trees, clear out all the vegetation, kick out all the animals, get to bare dirt, and then plant whatever you want, soak it all up, clear it all out, and then pull out.
Yeah. It's a monocrop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're literally kicking away all the natural resources. So you're just creating all these malfunctions and what's going on, how nature's supposed to operate.
Yeah.
It just blew my mind.
Yeah, and the land gets a lot less fertile that way because you don't have any death in it. You don't have any rebirth. You don't have anything to feed the soil, any nutrients.
Like we didn't learn from the Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
California's on its way. We're like the number 1 ag state in the whole 50.
Yeah. But I also think that's damn near the only way you can do it when you have 8 or 7 billion people, you know.
But have we tried the other way, I feel like?
Yeah.
Do you think at the scale that we could have tried it at? I don't think we have.
Obviously, everyone could have quit and been on the same wavelength, but you're not going to get everyone to quit and be on the same wavelength.
Not now, no.
Yeah.
I think there's better ways we can do it.
But I think with technology, we'll find out better ways of, obviously agriculture and... So the only thing that could save us now may only be technology.
Maybe, depending on how we do it. I saw this like a picture in a magazine Where like in big cities, as they're growing bigger and bigger, they're gonna have like sky rises that are like greenhouses, growing all your vegetation. Mm-hmm. So rather than taking up huge functional land, why don't we just build up?
Yeah, there's like already urban
smart.
Dude,
urban
you could be
farms.
just building skyscrapers of greenhouses.
Yes.
And fuck, dude.
Yeah,
that's a $1 billion idea.
That
right
motherfucker
there.
was smart.
That's literally a $1 billion idea.
Yeah, they're already doing that though.
Where are they doing that?
Just different places in different cities.
Okay.
They'll like take abandoned warehouses, transform them into like different levels, and then they'll grow food on all the levels and up on the roof. And they're doing this in like just random cities. Like,
why don't we start doing that?
Dude, that's our business right there.
It's like a cost thing. You gotta have like obviously a large plot, and you need to have like obviously the right materials, and it just it may not be
right now. It's probably not cost effective.
Yeah, because you don't have acres and acres of land like out on a farm. Like you're gonna go way more out there than you are in there. So it's, but they're doing that with like tomatoes and stuff. They're making those greenhouse tomatoes.
The trick is how you advertise it though. If you advertise like this is like your home local like organic place to come get food, people flock.
Well, I could see it working. Yeah, I could definitely see it working.
Yeah, it has to be one of those things where people would have to feel good. They would drive a couple miles just to go to your place because they think it's sustainable.
But it doesn't even have to be like a fuck, dude. It could be like a farmer's market within your city. Like if you're the city of Folsom and like you create one of these like warehouse looking things where you have all the fruits and vegetables like growing right there, and then you pay people to like pick them, and then you have a little store at the bottom and like stuff like that, and then you coming into like a fresh farmer's market like every day. How sick would that be? And then you could expand your warehouse of like with how many people you have in Folsom. So if you have 70,000 people in Folsom, you know you need this many tomatoes, you need this many lettuce, and you could have all these things so they're coming ripe, and it like can be like a system where you're legitimately growing the food right there, ready to go, and then you know it's fresh because you're going to the super fresh like farmer's market literally every day.
Do you think you'll have enough space and capital to provide the?
I think you could do it if you start small and then just grow. Because you would have to run it like you're running like a Whole Foods or a Save Mart or any grocery store. You would just have to run it like we have X amount of people in this area, so we need to supply X amount of tomatoes, X amount of lettuce.
Well, what you could do is you could get good enough. I think another potential goal would be to get good enough to where you just have subscribers. Or to where people have to sign up just in like this. We only sell this much. We only sell X amount. So like
that's probably a good way to start it off for sure.
You know, almost copying the Supreme model that Supreme does.
Yeah, then you get like Netflix like subscriptions every month, and that's a way to make even more money. Because then if you want to go up in subscribers, then obviously you have to expand your warehouse, so your costs go up.
But you can have them sign up before, so you know exactly.
I know, exactly.
How to
yeah, genius.
It's a good thought.
And you would have a fixed rate at which they would pay for that subscription.
Think about like Costco. But except Costco...
Well, I didn't know if you were going to let the market determine it or if you're going to have a fixed subscription rate. Okay.
Fixed subscription rate.
It'd definitely be easier to have fixed.
But isn't this what Costco should be doing?
Yeah, if Costco is
Costco or any store, really.
They would do that, and they
any
could
store.
charge
Think about it. If it was...
But they have a good business model. They care for the people.
Yeah.
And they're
big
rich
enough warehouses.
Yeah, and they're rich enough.
They had another layer on top of their warehouse.
Yeah, Costco's doing plenty well. But that definitely does seem like something Costco would do.
Well, they just came out with those avocados that last longer now because there's a Bill Gates backed company that made something that makes an avocado last longer, and then Costco is basically rolling that out. I just saw
that's cool
article on that. Yeah. So Costco is doing big things, I guess.
Dude, has no one thought? Was this like an original idea you had?
Which one?
This warehouse,
the skyscraper
thing?
No, I saw it. They're testing it out.
Are they testing it out with like a store below where they're selling the fresh fruit?
I don't think so. I think they're growers.
Dude, I think that would be...
Oh, it's a great idea.
A great fucking idea, dude.
The problem with the overhead is the building.
Yes. The
That's a
finance
lot
is
of
going to be
money.
really hard to get this.
Now,
right?
granted, I know.
But this is like entrepreneurship at its heart.
I know a commercial real estate agent that we could probably get a decent rate downtown. Yeah. That like we could probably he could find us what price range we're looking for and the size we need, but we'd have to front the money. It'd probably be a lot more than I think what we're expecting. Because rent downtown's expensive.
Oh, it definitely would be.
A lot.
You would definitely need some loan or some backers or something. Some VCs or something.
I wouldn't want to go into that business with investors. I don't think you'd make. I think
you might need to though. Like, in our scenario, yeah, because we don't have any.
But I think it's a great idea where, like, if you really thought this through and hammered it out,
you could start really small.
That's a lot of money.
No business is fucking easy to start, you know.
No.
So it doesn't matter what you get into. There's always you can think of a million reasons why not to do something. But if there's just a few good reasons to do it, I feel like it's worth at least chasing your ideas through it.
So I've got an idea I'm working on right now. That's a really good one. I'll turn this off. I'm not going to even say what that on. Because it's so simple.
Are you being serious?
Yeah, because it's so simple that it's just like, if. So we came back with a urban greenhouse picking farm called the Garden Club, where you would go in and pick your own fruit and walk out. You could buy by pound, buy membership like Costco, but you're not buying in bulk. And it's the healthiest, greenest stuff around. Come check it out. Come sign up the Garden Club over at Folsom, California.
That's our radio advertising.
we already have a radio advertisement down.
I don't know.
The marketer's fast at work.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's kind of interesting, just a funny idea that we kind of rounded about, but I think the biggest caveat was the overhead to have a huge in-house greenhouse facility with heating and air.
And be able to supply enough to your constituents.
But I don't know, we're just trying to figure out what the future will hold in business for agriculture, because eventually, I don't know, it's going to keep moving. We're going to use up all the soil pretty soon unless we keep creating all these, GMOs and shit.
Yeah, at this point, it's just going to be technology that either saves us or destroys us. It's going to be one or the other.
Probably it's going to destroy us.
Probably going to save us.
All right, well, this is episode 16. Episode 16 of the Zero Go podcast. I'm August Thompson.
Michael LePage.
Mark LePage.
And we out.